Hey guys, how's it going? Ghostly Rich here today, and this is going to be episode 2 of this series. In this part, what I want to get done is I want to start getting these downpipes done. So this one, we just have to fix the wastegate that unfortunately got butchered off, and as you can see, this one will also need to be ground off for that welding bung and either relocated or maybe we put it in the same location. I don't know yet. Either way, how this will go in, it should just go down there like so, kind of rotate and slip in like that. And as you can see, just needs a flex joint, then this gets rotated and gets put on. So it's a flex joint and a right angle. Looks like it shouldn't actually be too bad for that one. Might even loosen that up and just rotate it and see how it's gonna look. Once I get it like this, I'm gonna actually just grab that V-band, put it on, and then I'm gonna go underneath the vehicle and quickly put on this pipe. This one has the flex joint on it again. Already has a V-band ready to go. This is gonna get modified. We're gonna put a V-band on here so it can V-band to that existing X pipe that I have. We might have to extend it just a little bit because of how this has been modified, but we'll see. That's it, lightly just bolted in. I want it to be loose so that way I can, of course, maneuver the fitting down there. I just want to see how close it comes down to where the X pipe should be and make sure this piece hasn't been modified. Again, I will be Cerakoting all of this. I can see that he had some rubbing. I'm guessing this was on his hood. I can't be sure, but I won't know until I get my hood on it and I have heat wrap on mine. You should be able to counter that just by rotating, hopefully. We'll see. Goes in super smooth. Again, it's 2 pieces. That one can be a little fun down there, but it's really not that bad. You just lift up with the V-band in your hand, wrap it around, and yeah, I just wanted to double check. Now, like I said, this has to get Cerakoted and possibly re-ceramic coated because of this. This is the reason, one of the pieces that need to get redone, and I think just the tip needs to be switched to V-band. So the passenger side is actually looking pretty good. Now let's go over the driver's side. As you can see, this one has all sorts of problems. As you can see, it was Frankensteined, so I need to cut all that out and have Dan over, and we have to basically rebuild it. It's completely been Frankenstein. So we will re-weld both those pieces up. Hopefully we can reuse some of it because some of it looks original. Like if we can actually cut right here and cut right there and actually just remake the pieces in between, at least that saves some time and some pipe. But also we need to make sure that the welds are going to be good, and it's going to take the power because the last thing I want to do is put that on there, and again, those look hideous. Next thing we've got to do is start taking the fenders off. So 1, 2, 3, go ahead and take the off on both sides. Go into the fender and take out the 10mm bolt in here. For that fender bolt, you might have a 10mm nut on the back end of it. Now to keep the fenders lighter, I'm going to suggest we go ahead and pop out the headlights. That's easy, just pop the red forward, slip this out. Come on now. There we go. Do that on both sides. Take out the 7mm, the 7mm, and the 7mm. Watch this. You can move it around with your fingers as you're sliding your headlight out. But there is one Christmas tree popper right here that's attached to this guy right here, usually, I'm guessing. Take this out. Mine's broken, but yeah, that's not going to go back in. Just go ahead. Pop that out so it doesn't catch that wiring harness when you slip it out. I can tell my fender's been off on the other side because when I took a look, this is a 7mm with a speed clip on this side. That side was a 10mm with a nut on the back. So I'm guessing the speed clip fell out at some point when somebody was working on it and just didn't replace it. After you've gone ahead and done that, let's pop out the 10mm here, the 10mm here, and the 2 10mm here. Grab the popper, do that. Now, since we're already here, why don't we just go ahead and remove this out of the way so there's no way of you bending it. Take out this 10mm, this 10mm, and you might be able to leave that one and this one. Just simply take out this one, and yeah, let's try that first. For this piece here, all you have to simply do is twist them sideways. So twist them like this and slip it out. Unless you want to, you can just slip the Christmas tree popper out. But I find that it's easier just to twist these ones sideways like that, and then it separates and you can pull the hose or through. And then take this and put it somewhere safe. Now you're not going to accidentally bend it all around. Now that we've got that brace out of the way, let's go ahead and pop out this one bolt here and these two bolts right here. For our side skirts here, you're going to have screws going up all the way down here. Go ahead and take those screws. If you wanted to, you could take the whole side piece off. I'll leave that up to you. Once you move that side skirt over, you will see two more 7mm. Go ahead and pop them out. Again, that's right there under the fender. In front of the two 7s, take out the 10 as well. And as you can see now, our fender is getting pretty loose in here. So let's open up the door and go ahead and get that next bolt that's inside the door crease. You can see it right up in there. So go ahead and loosen that. It looks like you might not have to take it all the way out. I'll let you know in a second. From here, just grab right here and pop this piece out. Just so it's out of your way. You can pop this in after. And then you have a nice spot here to hold it. I'm just wanting to see absolutely everything before we slide it out. There's a bolt right here. I'm pretty sure I was supposed to have a bolt right there on the driver's side, but they never put it in when they put the car back together. So if you stick your hand in here, you will feel on that corner, right there in the middle, and on the bottom is three, I think they're, I'll have to feel again, I think they're 8 to 10mm nuts. You loosen them, and after you loosen them, you should be able to pop this forward and slide it out. Gonna be hard for me to show you, but there. Seeing that opening, you'll see the 10mm bolt. Go ahead and loosen it. Again, all you do is loosen those 8s. You press on the edge of those clips right here. You can do that from reaching in the fender well. Press on the edge, it pops this free, you slide up and take out. If you want to, go ahead and pull them all the way out, but you really don't need to. To get this bolt, I reach in through there. I hold the ratchet with that hand. So you bring the ratchet in through here, feed it up, catch it with your fingers, and press it onto the bolt. It has to be a small ratchet. I ended up getting it loose with a wrench, and then after that, I used a bunch of wobble sockets to feed in through here, guide it through here. This is one of those bolts where I can see why they never put it back in on the other side, I guess, when they pulled the fender off. I'll leave it up to you if you put this back in. If you don't, you can actually put this back on and just seal it up without that. But I will tell you this, if you put anything in this fender and you have to access it, and you have to get that bolt out every time, it will take you longer to get that bolt out than almost take out every other bolt for this fender. I found that sawhorses, depending on how thick yours is, hold these fenders great. They have that groove in the center, so set up a couple sawhorses and just put them in there. And look at that, we found our dry sump tank. So just leave that stuff, don't mess with it, obviously. And tuck some stuff in if you want. And like I said, that 10mm that was right here, I'm gonna leave that up to you. My other fender looked just fine and that was not attached, so I'm thinking that isn't gonna go back in. Once you have this fender off, this vacuum pump is supposed to mount in right here. So, as you can see, we have a nut cert right here, and there's this piece and there's a plug that was on and plugged in here. I used my panel popper, I popped that Christmas tree out and I popped this one out. As you can see, these are now loose. I'll probably pop this one out too, just so I can give you a better thing of what I want to be able to do here. So, what we want to be able to do is put our vacuum pump in here. So we'll relocate these wires a little bit. I might even do the same for right here, just to keep them kind of tidied and off to the side. Underneath here, there's a little plastic tray, and I might have to pop that out. I don't know yet. We might just have enough room not to, but basically what's gonna happen, I'm gonna put a self-tapper screw in here. After I put the self-tapper in here, all this is gonna get removed off of this with an oscillating tool. I'll go ahead and not what's underneath, just this panel. How you get this out is, here I'll show you, just to make it easier. So basically, take the computer, tuck it in down here for a sec. Now that that computer is out of the way, like I said, I'll strap these wires over here or just wrap them around under here. My plan is, this needs to go there. As you can see, I think UPP just went and they bolted it off of one of the nut certs. What I'm thinking about doing is, I'm pretty sure from my measurement, this is about the same distance. So if I cut this out just a little bit, then I'll be able to mount the vacuum pump with a nut and bolt on one side with a spacer, and then put that one on that side. Now that, in my opinion, would be a little bit stronger and better. Again, we might have to put a spacer on it, but otherwise, the way this will work is this goes down like that, from what I can see in their video. Like I said, just take that oscillating tool and cut off the whole bottom of the bracket. I'll show you why. Once we go on to here, boom, we still have that. Now, all we do is we take a simple little plastic screw like so, and we fill in behind. Just make sure you're not gonna drill into anything. And simply, you can even put it right here in the corner. Yeah, there's nothing right there. So, like I said, just go ahead and tie this right in the far corner. Stay in this flat spot here, because if you put a self-tapper in there, then it's not, well, not a self-tapper, but a plastic screw, sorry. If you put one in there, then it's not going to impede the module from sitting in there. There you go. Can't lift it. If you wanted to, make sure you could put another small one in right here, and then it definitely won't, because right now, if I wanted to, I could lift a little bit. But again, it was only ever held on by this one, which is holding it down, so you could have still tried to move it if you really wanted it to. But again, it's not going to fail from here. If you guys are wondering how I remove that module, it's just lift and lift. Oh, slipped there. Again, I ended up putting a second one in. Now, it'll never move. It's not the prettiest, but look at that. Fits right in there now. And there's a space in behind there, so when we run our new hose, it'll actually fit right behind that piece of plastic. And when we strap it a little bit, so that way when this is wobbling a little bit, like so, won't be making any noise inside the vehicle. So, and that's what those isolators are. Do not remove those isolators. Now, I know that there's a couple spots where we are removing bolts that are not going to be reused. I will leave it up to you. Grab one of those, put the pinch on here, and go ahead and we'll use that as a nut spot. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. If you're not putting this one back in, go ahead and take that. I decided to make a slight notch here, and if you're wondering why, it's so that way I can flip the pump around, because then the electrical connectors and stuff will be down here, and same with the out. It means that I need a little bit more hose, and to tell you the truth, I think it'll act out way better than if it was the other way around. I don't want the hose and stuff banging against here. You'll see when I mount it. Again, as you can see, I just simply put that clip on there. As you can see, no rubbing. If you have any rubbing whatsoever, go ahead and just take a file if it's minute amount, or take your oscillating tool and clean it up until you have no rubbing. I went a little bit too far into these corners. Again, I was trying to get that wire clip in there. So you don't have to do that much into the corner, but again, like I said, I've mounted it in there and I can move this and there's no whacking or tapping, because if you have any whacking or tapping, you're gonna hear that in the vehicle. So now this I can strap here, and when I run my wire through, if you actually look, it's gonna come down through there, and right behind the pump, or where all these other wires are coming from the engine bay, is where you're going to relocate that connector. Now you can either do this two ways when you're moving this plug. What I'm going to do is you can either A, go to the pump side and change it, which I wouldn't, because if the pump fails, you don't want to have to alter the pump. On this side, my plan is to tape or take the tape off the loom. I'm going to go in here. There will be two wires. As you can see, it's a 2-wire connector. I'm going to add 2 wires, bring it down here, or cut the connector, add the length of wire I need, and then have it connect into here. Then the next thing we have to do is right at this check valve, we have to cut this, and we need to route a hose up and around through here, down through there, here, and put this quick disconnect on. Again, all you need to do is get yourself what's known as push lock fittings. So if you want to, rather basically on each check valve, slice right there and slice right here. That will remove this plastic hose, and then take it, or at least slice right here and remove it from the vehicle for right now, because no matter what, you're gonna have to relocate the T to down here. Don't forget to resync your connector in. Perfect. And when we're all done here and we've run all our wires, then we can do some zap strapping, but for right now, there's no point. Again, I'm sure there'll be a part, if you don't want to use that one from there, the speed clip, you could just use a fender washer and a nut. You would just take this bolt to the store and get it fitted. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what size it is. Again, lightly with an X-Acto blade, and then just simply pull it out like that. This is going to be the part that goes down here. And again, we can reuse the bend, or yeah, we don't have to. We can use our own hosing, but I'll probably just reuse the bend. Funny enough, this can fit just like that. And then when you get your other piece of hose, we can redirect it over there. Again, that's the fun part. These are all twirly kind of fittings. Even if we had to do this, do a loop and then up, that'll work too. If you take a look, this is just push lock line. You just slide it over the barb. Do the same for down here on this side of the barb. Just slide on a piece of push lock, bring it up here. I've lubed up both sides of my barb so that way I can squeeze this as tight as I can into those two pieces. And then we'll put another small piece onto here. So this is that sensor. As you can see, I put the T fitting right here, piece of push lock right here, another piece from down there to this one right here. I just put a piece of tape when I was putting it down there so I could see where it was. But now this comes to here. That's the sensor. So now we're going to put a big piece of pipe from right here, and we need to get a right angle 1/2 inch barb to another 1/2 inch barb. So we need a left angled 1/2 inch barb fitting. If we get that, that'll go into the brake booster, and then it'll connect to another push lock line, which will go down and then up into the sensor. And then your vacuum is completely rerouted. So like I said, you're gonna need yourself some AN10 line, from which you'll be ordering already. Take a scrap. It's about 12 inches, I wanna say. Right here is a 5/8 barb. I grabbed these off Amazon by Gasher or something like that. Couldn't find them at any local hardware store. If you can, sweet. And again, just 5/8. From there, go ahead, grab this, wrap it through, and squeeze it in. I'll probably clean this up in a bit. For now, I just put some electrical tape on there. But again, can always, if you have heat shrink, slide heat shrink over, and that will keep the tips nice and done as well. You probably need, I want to say 3/4, 1/2 inch won't work. When you're done, you can see how it's on an angle away from the header, goes down underneath here. So that way when we put our heat shield on, it should help also protect this a little bit. But that is how it's going to bolt up. And again, use brass so that way the heat of the header does not melt the fitting. If you use plastic, chances are it's going to melt. Next thing that you're going to want is about some 14 gauge to 12 gauge wire, and that is so we can run our pump. As you can see, it's a thicker wire. Don't use anything too thin, like a 16 gauge. Go at least to a 14. From this point, I've got about 2.5 feet of it here, and I've loomed it. All I'm going to do is feed it down into there, and then we're going to cut that connector off right about here, and then we're going to solder that connector on the one side. As you can see, you've got the purple and the black. I would just do purple to red, black to black. Fed it down with the vacuum pipe there that I ran before. Literally, you just stuff it in there and you can reach in and grab it. As you can see, we'll just put on the tip right here. We'll solder it on and shrink tube it. And it'll just simply plug into here, and we can just kind of zap strap it right there. You could even do a little bit less if you want to, because then your connector will just be right about here. Again, we'll see with mine. I'm gonna do the connector end first down here, so that way the connector has still got a loop for service. And then over here, we'll have a little extra, which will be nice. We can tuck that in down there. And again, we just solder it in onto here. I'll cut these two straps that I did and tuck that in after I shrink tubed and whatnot into this same bundle. Just finished again soldering and then heat shrinking. Now right up to this rubber piece on here where the tape used to be, I'm going to pull up that access so that way this goes all the way up to here and then tape it back up so that way it's just like it was up there. So pull this all the way up to the loom and give it some electrical tape. Now up here is done. I'm going to go ahead and throw that loom across here, make the two mate there in the center, and then tape it all up. From there, I'm going to cut my two zap straps, sink it into here, and then it should be heat wrapped. Now that we've gone ahead and we've wrapped all that up, and that is now moved, technically you could put the fender back on. Now another thing I was going to say to you is you might actually be able to put your coils in here if you didn't want to have your coils up on the top there. Now that would make it a nightmare when it comes time to if you have to switch a coil, but I have seen people throw their coils in the fender. I don't think I'm going to do that because again, I've blown an ignition coil and it's really nice to be able to just quickly swap it out rather than have to remove an entire fender to get at it. Now one thing you can do, which I'll be doing probably when I pull out these headers, is swapping the valve covers. The reason why is if you swap valve covers, the PCV fittings are up here in the front. If you swap sides, it puts them in the back. It puts them away from the heat. If you don't want to, you could go with the way they are. Just make sure that they are definitely far enough away from there, and you'll want to make sure they're heat wrapped. With the factory coils, or sorry, the factory valve covers, I don't know if it'll work, but I know with these ones I can run them like this. The only thing I have to do is figure out the coils. For the turbo feed size, you are looking at an 1/8 inch NPT to -4, and all you do is you just tighten those in. The bottom, which is the return, you have to have that little plate, and then you can just silicone around the opening and sandwich it in. I'll show you those when I silicone them. I just wanted to make sure that these fit. Now for me, I'm using the improved racing oil thermostat. And the reason why is because I run a oil cooler up front here. I decided to do that because I couldn't believe that they had a coolant cooled oil cooler down beside the header back when the header was down there. Thought it was horrible. Personally, if I were you, go ahead. You can look at my video. I don't want to bore you with watching that unless you're going to do it. If you're going to do it, go into the description. I'll have it there. You can see how to remove the oil cooler and go ahead and mount this. You can also watch this to see how to remove the oil cooler, because I'm going to show you exactly where you need to drill into the factory oil cooler to add in another one of these fittings. If you're using the improved racing, all you need is an M12 times 1.5 thread adapter to 1/8 inch, and all you do is you go to that oil sensor port feed and you tie this in, and then you can use that as a feed line. For this though, if you don't have the improved racing block, then you're going to need to drill and tap 1/8 inch NPT threading into the factory oil cooler. I'll show you where that is now. So the factory oil cooler, you'd have that big piece down here. You don't have to take that off. Technically you have to, if you look right here, this is where the oil thermostat, the new one, goes, but if you don't have that, you need to drill a hole, a pilot hole right here, and then thread it for an 1/8 inch NPT right here, so that way you can tie one in. That will go into here. I would recommend taking this off and doing it so that way you can clean it out thoroughly when you drill that out, because this will bypass your oil fill neck, which has that screen on it. So when we drill into the pan, you don't have to take the pan off if you don't want, because there's still that screen on there. So if any shavings were to try and get through, it should catch it. But this goes straight to your engine, meaning that if you drill this out and you don't clean it out properly, it will feed metal shavings throughout your entire motor, and I can guarantee you it will not make you happy. It will probably blow your motor. So if you're going to drill and tap this, take it off the vehicle, drill it, and clean it appropriately. So I have some good news for you guys. We only need to tap and thread in these. We will not be punching a hole in the oil pan with the rotor roach, and I'll tell you why. I found a company that is now making a block that bolts to the side of our engine block, has an in and an out in it, meaning there is absolutely no reason to tap your block. So stay tuned for that. Don't tap your block like you see in other videos. What we're going to do is put this distribution block in. It's going to have an in and an out, which means you don't have to drop your oil pan. You don't have to do anything like that. If you're going to be saving these O-rings, take them off. For me, I always replace them. Basically, as you can see, I've already cut this tip off, and I've cut the big line off of here. There it is. If you're wondering what I did, hold on to the fitting, go straight down with an oscillating tool to keep it nice and flush. If you're great with a grinder, go ahead and grind it off, and then you can just clean this up with either a grinding pad or a filing agent of some sort, and just keep it nice and flush. From here, we're going to tap these holes. I believe it's to 3/8. So this is where we get our 3/8 to N10 or N8, and then we would just make our line out of that. For me, I went N10 with everything for all my fittings. All right, so what I did is I put this in the vise. If you have some soft cushions, you can go ahead and do so, but it just fit right in between there. I did it up nice and tight. From there, what I did is I have a pretty strong impact, but I went very slow. This fit perfectly into the tip there. You might have to file it if yours is kind of melted. Anyways, all you do is you file it so this is a nice round hole, line the tap up, make sure it's completely straight up and down. Now, if you're wondering, well, Rich, why would you use a impact and go very slow rather than using a, say, wrench, especially if you just buy these taps online? The reason why is if you use a wrench, you're going one-sided, and it can cause the tap to lean or push to one side as you do it. I usually do it with the impact because then you can keep it full on, full down, full force. Now, of course, if you have like a drill press or something, I'm going to tell you to tap with that. Why? Because then it's going to keep it perfectly aligned. Your drill press, you simply push the handle down and it will keep it straight all the way down. For best practice, it's always that. Now, if you're wondering, Rich, what about tap and dies? Well, you can get a tap and die set. I have one, but the 3/8 that I was putting in was much too large to be able to actually use that tap and die piece. It's just too small. So keep in mind, you do need a pretty big tap piece with two hands on each side to be able to do it. But like I said, I ended up using the impact and I went nice and slow with a 1/2 inch while going down. Some people will not agree with this method, and it's all right. You can do it the best method you see. And again, if you don't agree with this method, be sure to do your research and look on the beautiful YouTube platform that you're using right now at different ways to tap. Anyways, for our AC lines, make sure you tap it at 3/8. So I went through and I did this piece. Again, I did not have an included adapter because mine, well, it wasn't sent with it. Because I didn't get this from UPP, I got it from another gentleman. If yours comes with the adapter, use the adapter they give you. If yours doesn't come with an adapter, because I don't actually know if it comes with one, you need to once again drill it out and tap it. Now you should use, I think it's a 37/64 bit, so 37/64. They're not readily available here. So what I ended up doing was I found a 9/16 and I drilled it and tapped it in. Now keep in mind that this centerpiece might try to spin. Now if this starts, like if this gets a little bent, don't worry, you can kind of fix it with what I used is a pair of needle nose pliers and used it as a ream. So if it bends this way, ream it the other way, and it will make it so it's more circular. It doesn't have to be perfect. When you go to slide it in, it seals against here. So this flat surface on here is what you don't want to ruin, because that's where the gasket seals. This just simply slips inside the block. Now make sure you clean this with some parts cleaner afterwards, get all those metal shavings out, and do that to both sides, this side and that side. If you can, replace these seals. You just need to get an AC seal kit. If you can't get them, that's fine. As long as they're not that old, you should be fine. It's just I like to replace them so there's no chance of them leaking and for you to have to get in there afterwards and replace the seals. Trust me, it's just not worth it. If you can and you have one locally, grab that seal kit. Go ahead and tighten that fitting back on. You can then lay your line in there and tie it onto the compressor. For this fitting, I went ahead and I put that nut at about 19 foot-pounds. For the one down there, I could not get a torque wrench on it, but go pretty darn hard. I'd say 19 foot-pounds, but again, it might even be 30. I gave it a good cranking because it is a bolt going into solid surface. I'm not too worried about that stripping. That being said, the nuts down here, for when you slide that line back in, make sure you put these, I'd put these at 15 each, or 15 up here, 19, whatever you want to do. I would just do 15 on both. I think 15 is more than enough, and you don't want to have a chance at breaking that stud because that wouldn't be cool. Now that we have that laid out, I don't want to build my line until I bolt my compressor back up. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and start to line that one post up from down here. So we'll go ahead, we'll give this a lift. You can either A, put the post in, or B, put the bolt in, whichever one you feel you want to tackle. See that fitting on the AC? See how it's aimed at the firewall right here, not the firewall, but the frame rail. You have to make sure it's aimed at the frame rail. Otherwise, if it's aimed straight, then when you go to put in your downpipe right here, it's gonna rub up against it, and you don't want that. So save yourself some time before you put that fitting on, or snug up the AC compressor. Make sure it's aimed like that. I'm sure you'll notice in the video before this, I had it aimed, and I ended up actually taking the AC back down so that way I could move that fitting properly how I wanted it, because I wanted to tighten it, not loosen it, because at this point, if I would have loosened it, it probably would have leaked. So now that I know for sure that I've gone and I've actually tightened it one full round more, so that way it's aimed right at the firewall, I can install that line from which we just made. And if I really need to, if I can't get that fitting on, then I will move it over. For the AC compressor, you gotta wiggle it back and forth as you put that first bolt in, the top bolt, because if you look at it, it's kind of got a jaw, just like this. It's the best way to look at it. And so when you're wiggling it back and forth, the jaws kind of go on the inside or over the inside like so, because this is the AC compressor side on this illustration, because the inside is actually the timing cover. So when you wiggle it and you get it up and onto there, all you do is, like I said, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. You can slide a screwdriver in to help line it up, or use the AC bolt, whatever you want to do. Just don't hit it with a hammer, because if you do, you'll mess up the threads. Anyways, as you go, just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And if you have a second set of hands that makes it easier, you can slide that bolt in and use it to line it up, and then you're going to start to tighten it up. If not, use a screwdriver or pick, whatever you want to use, and just get that lined up. Now, for the bottom one, it's just the post. Just thread that post in by hand. It's going to be fun. You have to maneuver it around the steering rack. Slide it in, tighten it up with your fingers, throw that 5.5 back on, tighten it, but not very tight. Like, you just want to cinch it. The foot-pounds on it, I think, is like 89 inch-pounds, because you want to just get the post to sink, because there's a stoppage on the post and it'll get stuck. And then from there, you use the actual nut that you're going to put on afterwards to do the torque, which is like, you could do 19 foot-pounds. I ended up doing both of them to 19 foot-pounds. You can go ahead and do whichever you'd like, but I just managed to get the bottom post. I wanted to feel it. I was like, that's about 19 foot-pounds. And then up top, usually for 13mm bolts, that's what you go for, is 19s. But anyways, well, from here, if you take a look, it goes around the AC, fully around the crank, back up, and then it makes a loop over the tensioner, under the AC, around, and then back up, and this goes onto the alternator. It's a very simple belt. One more time. Down, around the crank, all the way around, and then it goes up and over the tensioner, down like an L, up from the AC. Now I have it done like this, so that way when I put the wrench on here and compress it down, it'll loosen it off and I can just slide it onto my alternator. If you're having too much trouble trying to get it on the alternator pulley, go ahead, line it up on the alternator pulley, line it up over there, and have it sitting right here in front of this pulley. Then when you squeeze up like we did to remove it, you just slide it back down again. You just put it on, squeeze upward, and this pulley will sink down so you can slide it underneath. Now I'm probably gonna have to make or order in an alternator shield because unfortunately, like I said, because this was a used kit, mine didn't come with it, but I do see UPP usually includes a slide-on alternator shield. Anyways, if you come here, there's this plastic connector. You'll see that there's 3 clips on it, or sorry, 2. 1, 2, you just simply peel them off and remove them. The reason why, although that it's nice to have this right angle adapter protector, we need this to go as tight as we can over here. So be very careful with those wires from now on in. What you'll do is you'll put heat shield like this, of course, all the way up and over the connector, but it needs to be zap strapped nice and tight to pull it as far away. Just make sure this entire piece is fully enclosed in heat shrink. So I'll have to, of course, move mine up, which I'm planning on actually putting a different one. I'm thinking about putting one big massive heat shrink over this. You'll see it later on in the video, but like I said, just pull that right angle off. So now that we've got a 12-inch piece of AN10, we have a straight fitting and a slight bend, not a full 90, but I think it's probably a 45. Either way, you're gonna need that. It's not quite, like I said, a full 90, and then a straight. And we're gonna put both these ends on here. If you've never done that before, I'm gonna show you how to make one line. After that, when I make these lines, which we're gonna have to make quite a few, just know it's the exact same procedure. So when assembling the line, again, soft jaws like so, and then you're pushing, but you're twisting the opposite way you think you need to go. As you're pushing in solidly and twisting in this direction, it will slowly start to feed in and you'll see it butt up against the threads. That's what you want to happen. Once you look inside and you see the rubber is completely against the threads that are right here, we're gonna go ahead and flip this around. You're again gonna put it like this. We're gonna tighten those jaws back down, and it's time to line up our fitting. Now there's 2 things you can do. You can either use AN wrenches on the straight one or a socket. I'll show you with AN wrenches because then you'll know what it's like to do for all of them. Before we thread this in, I will say this. You can either A, lubricate this using blue Loctite, that's usually what I use, but a lot of people use just used or new engine oil. You just lubricate the threads with that. This is going to help keep the heat down and help the threads go in nicely because these are just aluminum and you do not want to strip them. So again, just lubricate them with whichever you'd like. I usually use Loctite because then I know the fitting doesn't back off. Get it started by hand. Grab back here and hold tightly on this line. What you don't want to see happen is the line start to, you're trying to keep it from turning. You want it to stay straight, but you also don't want it to twist. So if we get this started and it tries twisting, you might have to flip your fitting upward so you can grab the line from right here at a closer point. If you're wondering what an AN wrench looks like, it looks somewhat like this. And what it does is it allows you to tighten these fittings with an aluminum wrench so that way it does not mar up the fitting. Again, I'm going to take my hand off of here for 1 sec just so I can show you this. All you're doing is simply doing that. And then take it, go back, and once again, we'll line it up so that way it doesn't mar up our fitting. Just like that. And then continue going down and tightening until it's all the way tight. Once you're completely sealed up like so, congratulations, you put the fitting on. Again, make sure, I know it's going to get real tough, you just don't even want to get a fingernail in there. So if you can't get a fingernail in there and it's nice and jammed up, you're doing good. Go ahead, do the other side. As you can see, it's really not that hard. Literally just make sure you go on Amazon, grab yourself, I wouldn't even grab these ones, grab the actual AN jaws for a small vise and go ahead and get one AN wrench. If you get them off Amazon, you're probably under 50 to 60 bucks. If you want to spend a little bit more, probably 100. And then once you do that, you can start making good lines. If you don't use these, oh, I could show you nightmares. You will mar up the fittings, you'll strip everything off of them. If you don't care, well, then you don't care. You can use wrenches, but I highly suggest that you get AN wrenches. I spent 3 years without AN wrenches, and then I finally bought them, and I've never gone back. I don't think you're getting any closer to your frame than that. Like I said, so you want to keep it like an angle right at the frame, and you might have to just do a little bit of tweaking when you get it here. If anything, try to keep it a little under, so that way if you have to move it, you have to pull it a little more, which would tighten it. But like I said, that fitting is aimed straight at the frame, comes up right to where, I want to say that's a 45. And we have that big opening there. This right here is my heater core hose. Again, all I did is I took this hose off of here and leave the clamp off, leave that silver clip off, slide it on down here, onto here, just like this. And look at that, boom, lines up with that hose that I cut that comes off of here. And that'll tuck up nice and tight in here. We'll cover this entire thing in heat wrap. Don't forget to definitely heat wrap this. I just tried the downpipe in there and it does sit pretty close to the AC line you make. So just make sure you definitely heat wrap that. Like I said, we'll get that, I think it'll be a 1/2 inch to 1/2 inch barbed fitting that'll hold these two together and suck it up right under the post, so it'll still be safe because the downpipe comes in and through over here. It still leaves a big enough gap away from the exhaust. Considering how close it was before, I don't think we're gonna have an issue. Man, I can't wait to remove this. This just looks horrible. But anyways, as you can see, that'll go to your turbo right there. This end's gonna clear our heater core and our AC. Why am I doing this? I wanna make sure you know that it's gonna clear for when you're doing your wires. If you keep this up to the post, if you don't put your manifolds in right away. Because if I were you, get this stuff all done before you put your manifolds in. I've only got them in here because I was doing some test fitting. And this way, it makes it better so I can demonstrate to you your parameters and how you can keep it close. So when you're doing your end, you don't need to have your manifolds in to save you time. So the next thing is, down here bolted, if you take out the 110 mil, you'll see that there's two connectors on here. You have to slide them out. They have little pressing clips. You just squish them, slide off. There's another one on the other side. You'll have to bend the bracket to reach it, but squish that clip and remove it. And again, it sits literally right here. When you do that, these clips get nice and free. The reason why is we need to find a place to mount our bus bar, and I think if we're lucky, we're going to get away with being able to mount it down here. It's the only spot I can see if we want to use that factory bus bar. If not, something we could do is we could re-head all the connectors and we could literally put it anywhere. But unfortunately, if we want to keep that factory bus bar where they can kind of go on an angle and down, we do have to find kind of a floating place, and you'll see that when I'm done. Again, we had another connector here. You just have to sink that little tab on it. You'll see it. There's a little barb that's here. You can either A, use a flat blade and sink the barb in and slip up, or B, if you feel just above the metal right here, you'll feel a little bit of plastic, and that's attached to the barb. If you can sink it in and slip up, it'll work. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop out this last clip from right here. Then we can tuck this guy out of the way, and there's when we bend this bracket down right there, there's another 10 mil right there. If you loosen that, that's another bracket out of the way. Then this whole compartment right here is free. And then if we need to, we can wire a bus bar system down here. Now yours is easy if you don't have the dry sump system. You can actually use this existing coolant screw and you can back it off the other way because you don't have this big dry sump tank in the way. But since my dry sump tank's in the way, there's just no way we can reuse that up here. There you go, both plug brackets are out. For a couple of these, like this one, you'll notice that there's like a Christmas tree barb that's holding the starter wire way over here. Now remember, our downpipe actually comes down right here now, so we don't have to really worry about everything being stuck over here. We actually want to push it farther away from the downpipe. So if you can, pop out those Christmas tree tabs and suck it in as close as you can to over here. Now we've got a whole lot of length to come down over here, and that way we don't have to worry about anything being closer to over here. It frees up a bunch of room in here too. And then same with this one clip here. You'll notice there is a barb on it. Just take it, slip it, so that way it has a whole lot more room so we can tuck it in over here. Again, some of this right here, if we want to, we'll grab a big thing of heat shield. Like I said, I've grabbed every size I could off of that Amazon link. And from there, I've just been lying in different sizes just to get it in here. I still have to wrap this AC line so that way this one AC line's protected, because as we know, the one pipe comes around here. Now you might also have to bend it a little bit with your hands, which isn't a bad deal. You just basically firmly grab it and bend the line around. Just don't do big motions, otherwise you will kink it. You just want to do little pulls in every direction, so that way it just wants to set and sit free exactly where we want it. See this skinny wire, it's a ground, so you want to trace it all the way back down to right there. If you loosen it, you can unwind it from everything and have it nice and loose, so you have more movement on this one connector. Since you have the fender off, you can reach in this corner spot right here. When you reach in here, you'll notice that there's a screw right in line with your hand in there. You'll feel a screw that's right in line with this piece right here. And there's two of them. You're gonna have to take out the top screw and the bottom 7mm. You'll feel them both, take them out, and you'll be able to lift that plastic bus bar. So go ahead, grab a punch or whatever you want to use. You just punch out that rivet, and again that post, or sorry, that rivet was right here, and you simply just hammer it until that post comes out. You can use a drill and try and do it. Just be careful when you're doing so. This is that factory alternator wire. You just have to pop that off. We'll try to save that boot. Not that it's gonna matter because we're gonna have to heat cover it anyway, but put this off to the side. I know I already heat wrapped it, but we are going to have to change that. The next thing is I'm just taking a look at the other connectors here, because these connectors look fine, but see these ones down here? I think what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to remove this module. So to do that, you'd have to pop this, and pop this. And then what we would do is just simply push back here and lift. Where's it up here? Let's see. Oh yeah, it's up front. Up there, up there. That's forward, yeah. There. Lift. And of course, as we know, wiggle. Out, wiggle, out, wiggle. Okay, they're color coded, so just keep that in mind. Gray, black, blue. Gray, black, blue. Pretty easy. From there, fold this and pull it forward, fold this and pull it the rest of the way forward. This module will then slip out again. See this? Fold forward, fold forward. I don't want this to hit the ground, but that's how you do it. Slips out at an angle, put it somewhere safe. From there, pull out the 13, the 13, and the 13, and this should just simply slip up, just like we did when we did the vacuum pump. Take this out of here so we can reach in behind here. This will help us move connectors around, and also this bus bar right here, we're gonna flip it around and have it inside here if we can behind the dry sump tank. I'm just doing some fitment stuff right now because if my calculations are correct, we actually don't need to redo this one. The only one that we might have to redo is the one that goes from the starter wire to the fuse box, just because that length is so tiny. If that's the case, then all we'll do is we'll make a new jumper wire from there to the box and we're good. And then this would just sink down right here, and we just add another eyelet off of here, or whatever we want to do, because we will have to extend this to go up to the fuse box. So, see what I did? Vice grip on here, bent this all the way back, so it's now a V rather than a 90. It's more of a 45, might even bend it a bit more, but by doing so, this will sink down into here. I can put that nut on, and look how much room I have. I bet you that'll be enough to get onto the fuse box. And because we kept all the factory connectors, this plastic piece should still slide over. Well, so far I've made it so the factory plastic cap still goes on over top and protects it. All of them are tied down. I guess next is just to try that fuse box plate in here. But again, it just fits so tight. It's kind of ridiculous, but I'll get that in, and I just want to see how close I am with this wire to fitting. If it's just not going to work, then it's just not going to work, and I'll create one. But if it's darn close, I'll be super happy. When you get to this point and you actually have all three of these up here, this one's able to come right here and this one's going to come right here, you can celebrate. That means you've done a really, really good job at getting your wires all extended out. I'm just test fitting everything right now. I'm going to double check. So far, I think that power wire that I was wondering if it was going to be long enough, I think it's going to be just long enough. Because if we come over to our fuse box, it mounts really low. This is really good news. It means I think we're good on the power and fuse box side. After we put that fitting there, I think this side's almost buttoned up, other than creating our spark plug wires for both sides. I just test fit the box in. So what I did is I clicked on the three connectors. After I clicked in the three connectors, if you fold it forward, you put your two posts on, tighten them up. While this is flipped up, you then slide in the fuse box holder, and then after it's in place, these two fold around, slide in, and then it's locked in. Then you put in those screws to lock it in. Now, I noticed that one of the screws that you have to tie in is right next to the dry sump. So unless we can do that, then this screw wouldn't go in. Only this one, the one over here, and the third one on the other side. You wouldn't be able to get this one in unless you can kind of like twist the box into it, which I highly doubt you will be able to. But yeah, well, quickly test fit it all in. Looks like it's going to work. It's going to need some tinkering about, but to be expected. Again, it does sink in here. Good luck changing a fuse on the fly. There's no more of that. You blow a fuse, you get to do a little bit of disassembly work. But either way, the connectors, if you're worried about them falling out or something, you don't really need to be. They actually get pressed in pretty deep as you're putting this whole thing together, and there's no room for it to back off the posts. They would hit the metal pan before they do so, and they sink in there pretty tight. So from this point, we'll go ahead and I'm just going to take this out so I can heat shrink. If you're wrapping this up, then you can of course leave it in there. It's just we have to of course heat wrap a ton more for my liking in this area. After that, this area is now wrapped up. All we have left really to do is, if you're a wet sump, not a dry sump, you'll have to, of course, put your dipstick back in. That way you can of course, I think they give you an adapter from UPP, a zigzag piece, which you have to attach. And then from there, I think all that's left on this side is doing the little ECS block that I have coming in. That's going to be an in and out. What's cool about it is you will not need a scavenge pump for dry sump. If you want to, of course, you can put one there, and it can also double as an after run pump. But if you don't care about that, you won't need it with this little block piece, or so it claims. We'll be able to tell, because if the turbos start backing up with oil, it'll tell us really quickly, because we'll have a lot of smoke. From this point, I feel confident telling you, yes, driver's side fender remove, but passenger side, I'm gonna put it back together now. That just entails putting those 3 screws back in. One here, one there, one there. You just slide up so it slides into the fender area. And then I'll put them back in with a little bit of Loctite. Again, just go one-handed on the ratchet. Don't want to strip those out. We'll clip the computer back on, and these are color-coded to the port they go in on the computer. And again, the computer just slides in on an angle. Angle it in here, snap it in, and put these back on. But again, if you have dry sump, I almost wouldn't bother removing this fender if you don't care about removing it so you don't scratch it or something like that. Other than that, this fender does not need to come off unless you want to run that hose through here. But again, dry sump, it's so full already. I could see that hose getting chafed and you ending up with a fender full of coolant. Again, as you sink it, you shouldn't have to push very hard. As you kind of go into the connector, the lever will come down and then lock it in after it's all the way down. And like I said, just follow the color-coded connectors. That blue is to blue, black is to black, and gray is to gray on the inside of the connector. Now that that's done, this fender's back together. And like I said, hopefully you guys can avoid having to take this panel off, because I think the fender is one of the hardest parts to take off on the car, especially if you're reaching in to get that bolt. One other thing that I decided to do is just combine these two. So that way when this piece comes, I'll be able to slide that downpipe in there rather than have that other ground over here, which will probably obstruct it. Well guys, that's about all I can show you for right now. Why? Well, I have so much other stuff being ordered in, but none of it's here yet. So I will show you one last thing at the end of this clip, something new that has replaced something that isn't here. So ECS has been working with me. They have a new piece. It's an in and out piece. So no longer needing to drill into the oil pan. This is awesome. I never liked that idea, especially with the dry sump system, since the oil level is already so high, since there is not much of an oil pan there. This uses almost like a vacuum system, so it'll have a vacuum in and a vacuum out. Be perfect. Also, I'm in talks with UPP. If all goes well, I'll be getting this downpipe, I'll be getting the intake, I'll be getting that thermostat housing, and I can then also get the brackets that hold their intercooler. And also, what else am I missing? The heat shields, like for the alternator. I need a couple more heat shields. But yeah, if all goes well, we'll have more parts coming in, and you'll have more parts coming up on the project. I want to keep these videos rolling for you, so the next couple ones will probably be shorter. Thanks again for watching. Press like if it helped you out, subscribe for more, and again, here's what I bought. This is just a quick look at what's to come. As you can see, the 2 small turbos are officially gone.